But in a conversation I had with a managing broker, this person brought up a good point and actually made me think about my days as a managing broker as well, which was not only do they get the agent and their expertise, they also get this risk mitigation kind of hierarchy structure in a way. And now a lot will depend on the brokerage. But you get a managing broker that has potentially decades of experience overseeing billions of dollars worth of transactions. You get access to their ability to call their attorneys with questions and things like that, that those brokerages, we had an attorney on retainer at the brokerage I worked for. And if I needed to, I could call them.
Welcome back to Life at 10 Tenths, where we inspire you to live at the pinnacle of your ability and purpose. Back again with my friend Matt Badelli. We are going to jump into a great shorter episode today, but we're going to circle back around on an episode that we did a little while back. One is it got a lot of attention, and second is that we've had some perspective and talked to some people since that episode to kind of go like, all right, we see it from some different angles, and I think it's good to look at things from different angles. It's good to step back and be like, all right, is there only one way to look at something? So we're going to talk about that. Obviously, if you like us, if you like what we got going on here, go check us out. One, you can download our app. Second is you can go to YouTube, go for free, subscribe, and that helps us out tremendously. And if you like what you hear on these episodes and you want to comment or banter with us or whatever that might look like, go and leave comments on YouTube. We will respond to you. We'd love to know who's out there listening. And with that being said, Matt, I've been referring to this as suing the general public, but it's really not. It's enforcing buyer agreement contracts that we have in place with buyers that we're working with as buyers agents. And we put this episode out because obviously there were some things that came out of a company that was going after a buyer and said, hey, we're going to enforce the contract that's here, which brought up a lot of stuff in the industry. There was, BAM Media did a section on it. There's all kinds of people that were talking about it out there going, what does this all mean? Lots of different perspectives. But it also had some people that stepped into our world going like, we're actually doing that right now. Like we are actively enforcing those contracts right now. And it was interesting to hear why and the agents that they were doing that for and the company and how they were actually standing behind their agent. And I think, again, everybody I talked to, everyone, I was like, well, that makes total sense. Yeah. Like, I totally understand it. So, Matt, here we are back here. I don't think this is going to be a huge, long episode.
No,
but I think it's a good one to revisit.
Yeah, I think, the reason why we wanted to circle back around on this is, one, to emphasize the opportunity to share and display value to your clients because of the way the industry operates now with the requirement of these buyer agency agreements. And so if you want to hear our first conversation on this, it was like early January. And we were talking about Ecofine Properties, the company in Florida that pursued a buyer who broke their agreement. And there's a lot of interesting things that were part of that story, and they were awarded $24,000. And what was interesting in our subsequent conversations, and as a former managing broker, there were plenty of opportunities for procuring cause and things like that. And it's usually all settled among the agents and the brokerages, right? And now hearing that, like, this happens, I wouldn't say often, but there are people out there that are, holding buyers to foot because of, them leaving agents hanging last minute after duties have been performed. And so there's more of this going on than just one brokerage. A lot of people are like, oh my gosh, are they setting the standard? And I do think because there was media attention, it could create a precedent for people, but there's a lot more.
Sometimes media attention is, sorry, Matt, keep going.
Sorry, that was it. I was just saying there's a lot more and we're going to dive into it.
Sometimes media attention is really good, and it's like, oh yeah, we made the press, and then there's sometimes it's like, okay, I don't want to be known as that company necessarily. Like we are standing up for our standards and what we believe in, and we're standing behind our agents. But it's just like, oh, I don't know if we needed to make the national news.
Yeah, that's true. Well, and so I want to kind of preface this with a little bit of a frame, Garrett, because when you sign contracts, it is a client and the brokerage that are truly in agreement. The agent is a representative of the brokerage who is participating in the agreement in terms of performing the duties, right? But the agreement's between the brokerage and the client. And this brings up some confusion for people of like, well, then who should be the one to say what we do or what we don't do? And if you compare it to, if you want to have that true, kind of corporation and subcontractor view of this, think about a home builder who has subcontractors working on a property. Now, the individual client who hired the builder is not paying every little person, all the stuff. It's all funneling through the general contractor. So now if the subcontractor doesn't perform work, or if a client is unhappy with work that has been performed and actually is done, and that person holds back payment, the general contractor is most likely going to enforce the contract and say, hey, this actually, if they can prove that it's been done to standard and expectation and all that kind of stuff, like, you owe me money. And this is where you see mechanics liens get put on homes from sometimes. People do the work and then the client doesn't pay. Usually it doesn't happen with homes. It's usually more commercial type stuff. But kind of a similar situation here where an agent might be like, well, I don't know if we should. But the brokerage is like, hey, listen, us as a unit has performed this work and we are entitled to this. And so I just want to kind of set that as a frame for people, Garrett, to kind of understand all the parties involved in this, because I think some people simplify it to like, oh, the agent should call all the shots, when it's like,
we went back and forth on it. You and I, we started sparring on it over, like, Matt and I love each other, by the way, but there were like, we get into some heated conversations because we see things East Coast, West Coast. We'll just say that, like, we've just coming from different angles. And it was wild because like we were like not seeing eye to eye on it. And it took a lot of discussing it out to be like, okay, I get that. I see this. And I really liked, you kind of brought me back to the side of it of like, it is the contract with the broker at the end of the day, the office. That office is the real one who has the contract with that client. Yep. As you said, the agent is overseeing this. They are kind of the agent of this, overseeing what's happening here. And really, at the end of the day, if that company wants to enforce it, here's what I thought was really interesting. I started to have a lot of conversations with people. I had a lot of people reach out. And one conversation I had, they were talking about, like, we actually have a couple of these that have been brought to our attention inside of our office. And one of them we are going to battle for. And the first words out of his mouth were, I really stand behind this agent. This agent is one that I trust, and I know they did everything right and by the book. And I'm really confident standing behind that agent. And it made me come back and be like, we talked about a raising the standards, raising of the bar in the industry. And it's an interesting thing is that if this is going to be something that's going to be more of a, hey, we're going to enforce these contracts, it will cause these companies to take a look at the brokers that they're bringing in and they're hiring and they're letting hang their licenses there. If I was a managing broker, owner of an office, and I knew that potentially I'm going to have to go to bat for all these guys based off of the work that they said that they were going to provide, I'm going to be a little bit more picky on who I'm just filling desk space with. It's like, all right, like...
Yeah, I'm not going to bat for an agent that totally neglected a client, but all of a sudden is like, I want that money. It's like, well, because the thing with these contracts too, we have to understand is either party can breach this contract. Just because you signed a buyer agent agreement doesn't mean that the buyer is the only one who can breach it. The agent and the brokerage can absolutely breach the contract 100%. By neglecting the client. Like, now, I guess it depends on how you write your contracts, but I would hope that there is unilateral control here.
But that's always been, if you're going to bother to take something to court, if you're going to bother to go to that level, like, you better, like, especially if the managing broker is standing behind the agent that they have, like, this is where you got to be really sure that they did everything in the right before you go and fight that battle. Because again, they're going to find somebody to be in the right on this. Yeah. That's what the job is when it goes to court. Who is the one that is, been damaged in this situation? Yeah. And I hate to say it, they're literally, I think they're going to lean in the consumer's favor a little bit more. So you better make sure you have everything really in alignment going to this, which again, I've come back to after a lot of these conversations, raises the bar. Yeah. I have seen one of the examples that was shared with me, which I thought was fascinating, was a multi-million-dollar buyer situation. Contract is under contract, going to closing, and a couple days before closing, they cancel the agreement with I don't know if they really even canceled the agreement. They basically just said, hey, you're out. We're bringing in our family member who's a real estate agent, and they're going to see this thing out to the end. And I was like, oh yeah, that's a viable reason to be like, that's not how the contract is going to support. Like we're going to follow through on our contract that we have with you.
Yeah. And it shouldn't just be a high value transaction, by the way, on that.
100%.
I mean, obviously it makes the gravity of the absolute dollars a lot higher, but if that's a $300,000 home, the principle is the point at that juncture.
And that switch over at the very end, because for the consumer, I mean, they're looking at it. Okay, and again, let's go back into multi-million-dollar. They're looking at that as going like, there's a lot of money we're paying this price. If we can keep it in the family, oh my gosh, this is great. Yeah. Let's just do that. And that kind of crap happens out there. Those situations do come up where people realize, I mean, I have a family member and same thing. I know that family member and I could very easily see that person going like, oh, here, we're going to get around paying that money. Like, I'm not just going to give that money away to somebody who, if we can keep it with a family member, let's do that. I feel much better about that. That stuff happens. And so there's a reason there's all these protection pieces here. This is a business transaction. We are in a working relationship together. And these are here to protect both parties. Yes. That's what it is there for. And hopefully everybody is showing up.
Well, and that gets into kind of the value, right? So, okay, like how do we demonstrate the value so that the consumers know what they're getting when they sign these agreements? Because let's be honest, like this is new for a lot of people. Buyer broker agreements have been around for a long time, and some people have chosen not to use them. Some people have chosen to use them. Some people sign them right before a contract because their office requires or whatever. But now we're thankfully in the point where we're having these conversations up front. And so what is the value there? So agents obviously focused a lot on your own value. What value do you bring as an agent? And I think that's obviously important. We need to understand that. But in a conversation I had with a managing broker, this person brought up a good point and actually made me think about my days as a managing broker as well, which was not only do they get the agent and their expertise, they also get this risk mitigation kind of hierarchy structure in a way. And now a lot will depend on the brokerage. But you get a managing broker that has potentially decades of experience overseeing billions of dollars worth of transactions. You get access to their ability to call their attorneys with questions and things like that those brokerages, we had an attorney on retainer at the brokerage I worked for. And if I needed to, I could call them. And that cost the company money, but was not charged to the customer, right? If there was something that happened. Now, you might say, well, they may not use those services. That's true. They may have a transaction where they don't use it, but it is there and available. It's like buying insurance, like wheel and tire insurance on your car, for example. You may never use it, but it is there in case you do need to use it. And that is part of the value of signing these contracts is you get the agent, you get the experience of their leadership, you get the access to their legal team, or they're using that access to help guide their clients. You get access to other things that they may have. And this is a really important, because particularly if you're talking to a perfection client, right? Somebody who is very analytical, all about risk, them understanding that you have these people on your team just in case. And in most scenarios, you never will need to use that. But if something comes up, we can go to bat for you. And that's important. And I think people very much underestimate that value that exists behind the agent. And this exists at almost all brokerages too. I mean, you all have E&O insurance. There's probably attorneys there. Even if you don't know, you're like, well, I don't know. I work for one of those virtual brokerages. There's probably someone there you can call and talk to, right? Because they want to cover their own behind too in some of these instances, sometimes from you, sometimes from clients. So find out what that stuff is and share that when you're communicating with these clients.
Matt, I think it's really important what you just brought to the table there, because again, so many agents, and this is where when we went back and forth and we're sparring over like, well, whose responsibility is it like that, as this is being performed upon. Is it the agent's one to call it out? Is it the brokerage ones to call it out? But at the end of the day, I think the agents take a lot of the responsibility themselves of like, this is my client, my contract, my stuff. But also at the same point, if you were to say, what is the value that you're bringing to the table? Very rarely do they lean back on, well, here's all the brokerage stuff that we have and all the services that are behind the scenes that are part of what you get when you sign this agreement with us and we're working together. These are all the services at your fingertips that you may not see.
Yeah. Even when I was a managing broker, like one of the things I would highlight to people is like, not only is your agent reviewing this contract, the managing broker is also taking a look at this contract as well. To, obviously to make sure it's in compliance, but also if there's question marks, like it's right there. Like particularly when we went paperless, gosh, it was like, I need to pull it up. Oh, there's the contract. Let's see what the terms are. Right. Yep. Beautiful.
I remember running contracts by my managing broker when I was first selling, and it was great because I'd run one through and he'd be like, you do realize how many open ends your little statement here in this addendum like leaves, right? Like there's so many loopholes here that like we need to tighten up all this verbiage and tighten this up to protect the client. And I didn't know yet. And that's the beauty of having, these experts behind the scenes that do it all the time. And yeah, the agents do learn over time, but even the good ones, it's good to have that. But it's also perceived value that needs to be shared with these clients as you're going into having these buyer agreements. I do think, Matt, also there's an interesting thing about agreements. We see this happen all the time where, when the arrangement is set up, let's go back to before we even had to do buyer agreements. And yeah, we just showed up and we were just a buyer's agent and we could take them out and we would just roam the countryside with them. And all of a sudden they would just disappear. And then we're like, oh, damn it, they bought a home with another agent. Well, you guys kind of had a shitty working relationship to begin with. Like, really? Like, nobody was really committed to anybody. And this goes back to like a service that you provide. Like, we can offer business planning to all of you out there. And what we know is when we charge a fee for it, people show up and take it more seriously. They actually show up and engage it, and they're involved with it, and it's something that they're there to do. If we just go like, hey guys, we're teaching this class, y'all get business planning for free, we're just going to give it to you. And then we're like, why hasn't anybody clicked the link? Why hasn't anybody looked at it? Why isn't anybody even checking it out? Because it's free. It's just there. And it's just like, whatever, it's there if we want it, who cares? Maybe we'll check it out. Maybe we won't. And then all of a sudden it's a thing of the past. There is something about building a relationship in a contract, in an agreement, in a form where it's like, hey, we're providing this, you're working with us, whether it's a money paid or whether it's a, hey, I'm going to sign this thing because I'm putting my word on it, you're putting your word on it, we're going to like do this together. That working relationship is so incredibly powerful, and it makes everybody show up better. It makes the buyer show up better. It makes the agent show up better. It raises the bar across the board. And I think that can be said when talking with the buyer. Like, this allows all of us to know what the standards are. We all have an agreement of how we're working with each other. It brings the best out of you. It brings the best out of me. And we're going to get you to where you want to go, in the time frames that you want to get there. We're all invested into making this work for you, as well as here's what you're getting by hiring me. I've always been a believer in buyer's contracts. I've always thought they bring a good working relationship. And again, sometimes they're going to need to be enforced. They're going to need to be, when we did our first episode though, Matt, the concern was that, it might open up this door where the brokers or the agents might just be going like, we're just going to go after them for our commissions. And I think that it can be abused in that way.
Yeah.
Every single person I've talked to and every single way that I'm hearing it when it's being applied out there, it's not how they're approaching it. But we do need to be careful of how the general public might interpret it.
Yeah. Well, absolutely. And I think for the most part, I would guess, having been in this situation myself with procuring cause stuff, is that if you have a good managing broker, like, since they're the one that's probably going to be making the decision to then have the broker in charge or owner of the company follow this path, they're going to be able to look at that and talk to the agent about like, what are we really doing here? Right. Because I've had conversations with agents.
That like, was the agent.
I get what you're saying here, but even if you're almost all the way right, we don't have any proof. Like, we cannot prove this. And that's a problem. If you're going to make a charge and an allegation, you better have the proof and be able to back that up, which is why I was always an advocate of buyer agency agreements, because that's your proof and that outlines who's responsible for what. And it actually encourages the agent to step up. Now, I do think, looking ahead, if we take these things seriously like this could even evolve into new pricing structures in working with buyers, whether it's retainers or upfront items or flat fee services or anything like that. All the different kinds of things that we've seen go on the seller side, I believe we're going to start to see some of that stuff come out on the buyer side, and we might see some interesting stuff. And I'm not saying what's right and what's wrong on that stuff. There's nothing wrong with signing an agreement and getting paid at the closing, as well as it always has been. I'm not saying that that's a problem, but we will see more stuff come up because we can have contracts that outline who's going to be doing what. And it's really going to force agents and brokerages to look at value of the service over the product. And what I mean by that is, a lot of people are like, oh, look at all these tools and things that we have, the product side of it, which are more fixed expense type things. And if you lean just in that, like consumers, those products are going to become more rapidly available for consumers as well. They're just like, well, I'll just go get those products and I'll do it myself. Whereas you look into this value of the expertise of the agent and the chain of command, so to speak, the leadership, the managing broker, whether you just have one for your entire state or one for your office, like that person still adds value, and that isn't something important to think about. The brokerage itself, the brand name, whatever it is, right? There's a value chain there that you can demonstrate and highlight, and that helps mitigate risk for your client. And I think it's important to share.
Well, and I think the buyer agreement, as you said, like that is the standard that the buyer agent is going to have to be held to. I think that's been a fear for a lot of agents out there for a long time is like having to have it put in writing of exactly what you're supposed to be doing, exactly how you're supposed to be showing up. That can be a little bit scary, especially when the reins have been so loose for so long of like, well, what is the expectation of how we're supposed to show up, how we're supposed to be presenting properties, how we're supposed to be doing all these steps to making sure that, we are working for this person. Especially when, you can enter into a working relationship with a buyer and the buyer's maybe not maybe they're a little bit distanced from you and you're like, you know what? I'm not going to give them my time if they're not going to give them, me their time. Like, man, I'll kind of wait for them to come back to me. I've been in those working relationships before. But if you have an agreement with them, see, now it's a little bit different where it's like, now I've got to be showing up in a certain way. I need to be bringing those properties to them within a certain time frame. I need to be educating them on these types of things. And those standards can be scary for some people. It also raises the level of the industry. It raises the level of what we're all bringing to the table. And I think anything we can do to increase the value that all of you bring to the table and let people understand what the values that all of you have inside of you. You all know how to do these things. It's a really good thing for the industry.
Yeah.
Really good thing for the industry.
On those standards of things that you do, just real quick, I think if you have the agreement, it does a couple of things that make your life easier as an agent. One, if you're going to follow through with a buyer, you hear it all the time. People are like, well, they're kind of on pause, so I don't want to do these things. I'm like, but if you have a contract, you still follow through. You let them know, hey, I hear you. You don't want to pick up on things right now, but we have a contract. It's my obligation to send these things to you. So I'm going to continue doing that for you. And on the other side, if you have a buyer who's unresponsive or somebody you don't like working with, you now also have kind of more of a symbol of I am firing you by canceling this agreement. Like, we are no longer in contract. And it helps you get released from your duties without them trying to come back at you. Be like, listen, I've performed this contract. You clearly don't want to work with me, so I'm going to cancel this. That allows you an immediate stop without them being like, well, how come you didn't continue X, Y, and Z? And so I think this helps keep the profession professional, and it helps you stay sound of mind somewhat. I get it. There's exceptions to everything and all that stuff, but that's kind of the beauty of having these agreements in place as well.
Well, the beauty about keeping it professional is like real estate is a big deal.
Yeah.
There's a lot of risk. We're talking big money for people. You can easily be put in really weird positions where all of a sudden it's like, oh yeah, we were supposed to respond to that addendum yesterday, but I didn't quite get it to you in time, but here, this is the impact that now has on you. Like, those things can happen. They do happen all the time, where all of a sudden you as the listing agent is calling the buyer's agent going like, you do realize you guys need to respond to this addendum. Like, we're waiting for a response from you, and you will be out of contract by this time. And you'll have agents going, why am I managing the other side of the transaction? Like, there are different levels that all of us bring to the table out there. And again, raises the bar, sets the standards of what you're supposed to be doing for these people, sets the standard for what they can expect from you. And at the end of the day, that professional side, this is a big deal. This is a very big deal. The amount of damage that can happen through a real estate transaction if it's not handled properly. It's why I always say, get an agent involved. I know how to sell real estate. Even when I was licensed back, it was now a long time ago, but when I was licensed, I still hired a realtor to help me with my own personal real estate, because I would get in my own way and I would think things through and be like, oh, it'll be fine. Where an agent goes, no. You don't want to just let that be that way. Like, we need to button that down. You don't do things to the level when you're trying to handle it yourself. And the power of having somebody in there, a true professional, to watch over it, you got to keep it professional. And these people they deserve it from you. They deserve that level. And Matt, I also love that you said it allows you to also understand when the working relationship is over, because you can send an email over saying, hey, currently, as of right now, I've been sending you all this stuff. I've been following through on the contract. You're not responding to me. As of right now, I'm assuming our contract is dead. And here's all the reasons why. And if you want to respond to that, but as of right now, you're released from the contract because we're not fulfilling it at the moment. It allows you to have those closures.
It also obligates the buyer, if they want to go a different path, to say, I don't want to work with you, and cancel the contract. Now you know. Okay. At least I know, right? And those closures are so important. So I would love to hear from the audience on this again. I mean, I know we asked you that last time as well, because things like this, I'm fascinated by. At the same time, don't put all this stuff in your brain. Like, focus on doing your job, being of great service, right? And I think part of this is understanding how these contracts work. But so you don't need to get overly of what does this mean for the industry? But if you want, go over to YouTube, check out our channel, Life at 10 Tenths, and comment on this episode, or download our app, Life at 10 Tenths. We put all of our podcasts in there, so you can go in there and comment there as well and engage directly with myself and Garrett and everyone else who's in that wonderful community, because we're always curious on catching the pulse with everybody. I mean, we have hundreds of people that are involved in what we do, but that's still a very small fraction of the entire industry. So we value your voice and your opinion. And if you do want to join us in this community, we would love to have you in the 11 Circle, which is our group program. Or if you just want some extra content, you're like, I love the podcast, where can I get more? We have an Inside Track membership where you do get more. We'll inspire you in there. We do these Monday mindset videos. We do Win the Morning sessions. We do book talks. We do daily posts to keep you focused and moving towards where you want to go. And it's all right there on our website, 10tenths.co. And also, if you download the app, there is a space where you can learn more about what we have to offer. So that's what I got, Garrett. Anything else before we let everybody move on with their day?
No, I'll say with the last episode, as I say, no, yes. As with the last episode, we got a lot of people that engaged with us over that. And I just want to encourage you, I would love to know where you stand with this, what you're seeing out there, what you're experiencing personally yourself around the buyer contracts and what's happening in your office. I know there are stories going on. I know it's not just this one office out here, Ecofine Pro. It's not just them, because as we have listened, I'm like, oh man, this is happening all over the place right now. And again, as I want to just say, every story I've heard is not just flagrant. It is well justified. And I just want to encourage everybody, just keep raising the standard of what this industry is. Keep showing up the best you possibly can. And these contracts are a good thing in the long run, because it does make all of us stand up to a higher level. So with that being said, Matt, thank you.
Yeah.
Appreciate all of you. We'll be back soon.
See you guys.